Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa addressed the nation at this year's 2019 State of the Nation address, which he acknowledged deepening in poverty in the country that has seen record inflation, rolling blackouts, as well as cash shortages. Joseph Busha, Managing Director at J.M. Busha Investments Group, as well as Batanai Matsika, who is the Head of Research at Morgan & Co., are joining me via Skype and at the desk to unpack some of the key issues that the President looked at and tackled. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. And Joseph, let me start off with you. And I'd like us to start with the State of the Nation address. Key highlights, key takeaways. What are you hearing that's resonating with you?
Well, so the main issue really is to say, listen, let's give me patience, gives me time to be able to undo, the 30 years or 37 years of destruction by President Mugabe. It's almost what we have here to say we had 9 years, 9 wasted years, President Ramaphosa knows to undo. But the main important issue in terms of reforms, that's really the key issue. How does he deal with state-owned entities, ZESA, which is the electricity, you talked about the blackouts. How do we deal with money? Yeah. Liberalization of, foreign exchange and the banking system. And how do we deal with hunger in particular, because the Zimbabwean government controls, the selling of maize, which is the staple food in Zimbabwe. So you can own, if a farmer, you can only sell to government. So he's also looking to say, how do we privatize that, including their own mobile operators?
So two big issues. One is a question of time and opportunity to fix what has been lost, if we put it like that, and the reforms, and in particular touching on similar issues that are consistent across the continent. Batanai, let me come to you. What are you hearing and taking out of the State of the Nation address? Key topical points that you are grappling with.
I think the address reiterates what is already in the transitional stabilization program, which is sort of the blueprint that has been put out by the Minister of Finance. But however, it's worth highlighting that, to the ordinary Zimbabwean on the streets, they've heard these stories a lot of times. But really, in terms of doing business and actually operating in Zimbabwe, it has been quite of a challenge, given the pressures that we see on a daily basis. I'll take, for example, the issue of inflation and runaway exchange rates. So really, there's been a lot of pressure, especially to the ordinary citizen, especially when you then look at things such as disposable incomes. So really, for people on the ground and also even businesses to some extent, we continue to see a deteriorating economic environment. I think there is really need for concrete policies that drive productive activity. I think the targets that have been put out there that Zimbabwe has to grow at 6-7% and actually not being met, because we're forecasting negative GDP growth for 2019. So really, there's need for boosting productive activity.
And of course, Joseph, it's not just the local audience, and it's also just not the local business audience. Investors, the international community, and even African peers are looking and watching the State of the Nation address. How did the President engage with those stakeholders? For the investor, for the international community, what is the key message that is being left in terms of the road to improving the attractiveness of Zimbabwe as an investment destination?
Well, he's got his own motto, which is Zimbabwe is open for business, and he has been on an offensive, international charm offensive to try and lure investors into Zimbabwe. So he attended for the first time the World Economic Forum in Davos earlier this year. He has been to the United States and has set up a couple of kind of business trips and forums to be able to showcase Zimbabwe, that Zimbabwe is not open for business, there are lots of opportunities for Zimbabwe. But until the reforms and legislation is very, very intact and property rights are observed, I think it's going to be very hard to follow. What he has done is go where President Mugabe used to go, look to the east, and there's always been just promises, because as you know, we still get electricity from Eskom. I think we spend about $1 million per month, and they're still basically in areas on Eskom. Because of the lack of rains, we used to supplement with hydropower from Kariba Dam, which is basically not full because, then the use of that is limited because there's not enough water. So he has been on a charm offensive to try and lure investors into Zimbabwe, but it hasn't really yielded results yet because you see the escalation of prices. Inflation, 175, and that has been kept since June, where the minister says don't publish it anymore annual, because people are going to realize that, we've run our inflation and prices are going every single day.
But Joseph Bush is latching on to the motto that Zimbabwe is open for business, and yet we're seeing businesses like EcoCash under some really severe pressure now as the activities of their mobile money agents have been caused to come to a halt because of the financial crunch. Can you just give us some insights around how this particular incident is a reflection of the business environment in Zimbabwe at the moment?
So what we've seen, especially on the authorities' side, is that they've put out a raft of measures, policies, and at times they're very inconsistent and very abrupt. If you're looking at the EcoCash platform, I think it's one of the success stories within Africa from a financial inclusion perspective. So what has happened is that there's been some distortions in the market, especially around cash. So you find that there are some users within the Zimbabwean economy that were abusing the system in the sense that they were buying and selling cash.
So cash for resale.
Yes. So you'll find that, they would actually, buy cash, say, with electronic money at a premium of about 6% thereabout. So because of those distortions within the economy, it sort of creates those arbitrage opportunities. But then to make innocent users of the platform to suffer, I mean, it's not really supportive of businesses. Just looking at figures, we're looking at something around 10.5 million users that are actually on EcoCash platforms, and we're looking at 6.4 million thereabout that are rural. So in terms of shutting down, a whole system simply because there are some guilty people here and there that are abusing the system, it's not really supportive of business. So this, which is why it then comes to the motto to say that we're then being open being open to business if we can't really support some of our domestic initiatives that we're running.
Quick one, Joseph, because I hear Batanai's argument to say that the local person and the agent can't be the ones who are bearing the brunt of what is a distortion in the market and what will result out of that. But the national payment system is potentially being compromised because of the cash for resale and the premium that is being charged on hard cash. How do you begin to resolve this?
Well, this is the government's problem. I think Batanai understands that very well. It has nothing to do with the users. It has nothing to do with the financial system in Zimbabwe. This is clearly lack of failure of government to be able to use the banks. So if you have got 1,000 RTGS, Zimbabwean currency, you pay that over EcoCash, but the guy will say, 60%. So 1,000 becomes 600. So you're going up to 40% of that. I think, if you look at ZESA, you can only use EcoCash to be able to pay your electricity. And that's what government have allowed. So they can't really blame anybody because people already were tired in the sense that government decided to tie themselves with their Econet as the only payment system in Zimbabwe rather than to use the banking system and other methods of collection. So there was no option. It was basically just a monopoly for Econet. They had structured themselves as government. And I can promise you people were really tired because remember, they introduced the 2% tax as well on every transaction above 10 RTGS as a way of collecting more money from people. So that was not going to be workable until we go back to the banking system.
Well, there you have it, and that's what happens, of course, when the market is distorted, and also the gift of hindsight, looking back and being able to see the impact of shielded monopolies in the market and what happens when markets come under pressure. A very big thank you to Joseph Busher, Managing Director at JM Busher Investment Group, as well as Batanai Matsika, who's the Head of Research at Morgan & Co.